What's going on, everybody? It's just Eric here today right now. It's cold and wet here in California again, so we are going to get started on some upholstery stuff while we're waiting. I got my sewing machine a long time ago. Haven't done anything with it yet. I just got it set up the other day. But today we're going to start with the rear seat cushion, and we're going to take this guy apart and begin the journey of doing some upholstery, which I have never done before. So one more thing to add to my list that I've never done. So I'm going to try and take you along the ride for taking this thing apart and getting started. All right, we will start with a tour here of how this thing's put together to begin with. So I know I've got some pictures when I come back to it later. So all this thing is held in with hog rings around the outside there, so that's pretty straightforward. The pattern, see here, cuts along the sides. We have that flap in the back that's a little funky, we'll have to figure out. We're going to stick with this same pattern, but I'm going to be going with red perforated vinyl in the center here, and then black on the outside. So we're sticking with the same pattern. I don't think I'm going to do the piping. I don't necessarily care for piping anyway. I think it'll look cleaner without that. And then I'm going to probably do a red top stitch on it anyway, which I think will look better without the piping. And then the front here. So as far as seat cushions go, these are pretty straightforward patterns. So like I said, never done this before, so what do I know? But looks pretty basic. So let's get this guy apart and we'll walk you through the process. And all of this I've learned just from watching videos on YouTube, as usual. So, okay, I'm going to start at the back here. I don't know what the best tool for removing the hog rings is, but I'm just going to try with the needle nose here and see how it goes. Get on one of these. This looks like it's got that kind of plastic binding on it here. It looks to be a little worse for wear. Took one hog ring out just as a test and it came right out. Of course, now that I turn the camera on, it won't come out. Isn't that just how it goes? Now I'm not keeping these covers, so I don't care about not destroying them or anything, so that's not a big deal. But you don't want to completely annihilate them in the process here, because I'm going to be using these to make a pattern. So we want to try and keep these as intact as possible. I think perforations on the bottom there. So that's what a hog ring looks like, in case you didn't know. So that's basically the trick. Just keep yanking these things out. Some of them will come out easier than others. Be careful not to pull too hard on the springs here. So I think these things are in general pretty good shape, but I haven't taken them apart yet, so I don't know for sure. So that's it. Let me go around the edge here and I'll bring you back. Just want to show the detail here as I'm taking this apart. So these guys here were clipped on to these springs right here, pulling in from the sides there, and then this flap here was just pulled over the top of everything. There's another row of hog rings here, which is holding the seat top on. And then that looks like it. So these things should pull out of there, but I'll get those out later. Okay, we got everything off there. Let's see here. As you can see in the back, it's a flap we were talking about. These things come around the side here, fold over, and then these guys are just clipped to the springs, and in the front there's a frame that they can grab onto. So let's see if we can get this thing off. I don't know if it's got any hog rings holding the seat itself down. It doesn't look like it. Nope. There you go. Easy peasy. So that's all pretty standard stuff there. Looks like 1/2 inch foam on the inside. Sorry, you can't see my hands. Here, it's like a 1/2 inch foam, which is what I was planning on putting back. The sides don't have anything on them. I was probably going to put 1/4 inch foam on the sides. But yeah, that's that. All right, so now before taking anything apart, we want to mark where all the interesting spots are. So like right here, where this seam comes together, you see that? Yeah. So it tells us where that center line is right there. Mark a corner here where that stitch is there. It's kind of obvious on the top and the bottom, but mark it anyway. One in the middle here somewhere. This back corner where the flap meets there. And that last one doesn't actually meet in the back there, so there's nothing there. Mark here. Okay, mark where the flap goes. And let's see, if I want to keep track of these, how do I want to do this? So looking at it from the front, say left, right, left, front, right, rear, I guess. Or there's just a little tiny flap at the back. You can see this here. Down there. Where are you? There you are. A little flap right there. A double R on that. Rear. And these flaps just go around the side. Right there. Probably overmarking this, but I'd rather overmark than undermark. That's everything. I don't think there's anything in here that needs to be dealt with. Alright, welcome to my drum room slash music room slash Camaro parts room to now sewing room. Again, something I've never done before, so I got a seam ripper. See that focus. Might not be necessary, might just be able to use scissors here, but I'm going to try and see if I can get the seams apart. I don't really know how these things work. Is that supposed to come off? Guess not. I'll try and stick it in there. No. Go that way. Kind of works. That's really just cutting it though. From this side. I'll try and get in between these and cut the stitch rather than cutting the material. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. So cutting the material is fine. I just have to keep track of what I'm doing here. Just go right down the line there. So just as easily do this with the scissors or a razor blade. I know I'm not using this tool right, but it's alright. We're just taking this thing apart. So, there's the actual seam. That's good, it's coming apart if I do it that way, maybe. That's how you're supposed to use a seam ripper. You get the seam going, and then you use the seam ripper to cut the actual thread. Like that. That's how you're supposed to do it. Okay, so we can get this started here. Strong thread. Anyway, you get the idea. Bring you back when I have this cut apart. Alright, let's show you what we got here. All the pieces go together. So the middle part here, so this is the front. Let me get my pen real quick. Alright, so front, rear. Okay, so those go there. So this guy and these two here fold on top of each other, like so. So this piece goes here, or this piece like so, and then these three are sewn together right here. So you've got that flap there, and then that flap comes over the top like that. So that's simple enough. The left and the right sides should be mirror images of each other. And then I haven't taken this part yet. Yeah, we gotta get this part, and this just goes all the way around. So the seam ripper, if you can get the seam started coming apart, then it works pretty well. Once you've got the seam coming apart, it seems like it'll slide in there, and then it's not grabbing the material as much anymore as the... I don't know a lot of fingers here, but try it this way. If you can get it in there, and then you can start. So I should have shown you this when I was on the big pieces, because it worked really well on the big pieces. Once you get it started, then you can just kind of, there you go, just kind of zip it along the line like that. That ended up cutting at the end there, but you see. So I'll get that piece apart, and again, that should be the mirror image to this one. And then I just have to be careful on the parts where I took everything apart to make sure I take into account the seam allowance. So if you can see on the edge here, there's generally a 1/2 inch piece there that will go together like this. So these two pieces go together, and as you can see, the way they're sewn together, there's actually those two overlaps. So you actually sew it like this, sew that together on that 1/2 inch line, and then when you pull them apart, then they sit together like that. So the seam, or the stitch, is inside there, so you can't see the stitch. So that's basically it. I'm going to get out my vinyl and stuff now and see about cutting out some patterns here. Let's see. Alright, well, this stuff wasn't packed in a very friendly way, so they had the big roll of 1/4 inch foam wrapped around the red vinyl, wrapped around the black vinyl. So here's the red. You can see nice perforation on that. Looks really good. Happy with that color. And then the black's down here. Alright, so took this guy, laid it down flat here, and try and line up the pattern as best I can. And then just measured that times 2. I'm going to put that there. There's a tiny little bit of shrinkage you'll get from the seam pulling in there. I don't think it's going to matter, but I might cut it a little bit long, especially on the back here. I'll leave it long because I know I can cut that. Unfortunately, my foam, I forgot it was all compressed in this thing, and they want you to take it out of the stuff and let it decompress for a week before you can use it. So I can't start doing any sewing with that right away. But this is the 1/2 inch foam, so this is going to go behind the seats, the bottom of the seats rather. The vertical facing surfaces will have 1/2 inch foam. So I'll cut these guys out, but I'm not going to be able to probably do any sewing with this, although I think I have plenty of material. I might just play around with it, just take some of this and play with it tomorrow. All right, well, went over to my parents' house today, and my mom, who knows how to sew, I had her work with me on the sewing machine, get it up and running. I think I talked about in the last part of the video that I need to let this foam expand, so I'll spread it out here so it can expand. But anyway, so I don't have a clean spot to work anymore. But so I was working on my seams here and folding things over and trying to do that. Then I worked on the top stitches a little bit. The sewing machine worked pretty well overall. It went kind of wonky at one point, and I'm not quite sure what happened, but the bobbin wasn't working properly, and I think I was doing something stupid, but it started working again eventually. Next time I'll show some actual action shots of the sewing, but so that was just kind of messing around. And then I took the piece of the red, and I decided I'd just use it as an experiment, so I took some of the foam, glued it on there. And then this is basically the way this stuff goes together. So you're going to take two pieces like this, right, and you lay them on top of each other, and then you sew it down the line here. And this is the seam allowance I was talking about before. So there's the 1/2 inch that we left for extra for seam allowance. So you sew it there, and when you pull the two pieces apart and lay them like that, then you have a seam like that. Make sense? So that's what you see from the outside. And then a top stitch, then you come along and you can put another stitch along the edge here. French seam is generally where you do both sides. I'm just going to do one side. Can you imagine of this top stitch looking here, if you could only see one of those two, that's how I'm going to do it. Because I don't trust that I can line two of those up next to each other and get them to look straight and clean and everything. So sewing with the foam on there is a lot more difficult, so I'm going to have to do some more practice with that, sewing with the foam. But it generally worked. The only issues that I have is like right at the edges where it wants to pull apart a little bit, but when we actually put the seats on, this is going to be sewn along this edge too here, so there'll be a stitch coming across here to hold it in place. So you shouldn't be able to see that little bit poking out like that. It should look like it does in the middle there, where you can't really see the seam. And this is white thread too, so it really would stick out on the. When we do it for real, we'll have black thread on the bottom, and then black top and bottom when we're doing this kind of stuff, and then the top stitch will just have a red on the top. It probably won't change the thread on the bottom, since it'll be black on red anyway. You won't be able to, even if the bottom shows through, it'll be black, so it'll be okay. But anyway, that's basically the approach. Hopefully I bought enough extra vinyl that I can do these experiments and not run out of vinyl or foam. So next time, I'm going to bring I left the sewing machine at my parents' house because the thing weighs like 6,000 pounds. So next weekend, I'm going to go back over there and we will attempt to sew one of those two cushions, and we'll see how it goes. So wish me luck. Anybody have any advice or tips, let me know. I'm going to put a couple of links in the description below for the two channels that I watch a lot, which is Mecca and Sichaflo. Not sure I said that right. Anyway, I'll put those two in there. Those are the two channels that I watch the most and learn the most from. And you guys can check those out. Anyway, so we'll see you on the next one. Adios.